Sweden is at crossroads. A country known worldwide for its robust welfare system, which includes universal healthcare, free education, and generous social security, is experiencing a national crisis due to its inability to effectively integrate an unprecedented influx of immigrants. In fact, Sweden has seen over 1 million immigrants and refugees arrive in the last decade alone. Each of these new arrivals brings hopes, dreams, and challenges. And to them, the welfare system isn't just a policy, it's a promise. A promise that every citizen, no matter their background or income, will be supported in times of need. But that promise is now being tested, as Sweden struggles to balance its generous ideals with the harsh realities of integration and economic strain. The costs of integration are forcing Sweden to rethink its policies and its identity as a humanitarian superpower. As a matter of fact, for the first time in decades, more people are leaving Sweden than arriving. So, how did Sweden get here? What does this mean for its famous welfare system? And can the country strike a balance between generosity and sustainability? Let's break it down, step by step.
Sweden is struggling to accommodate 165,000 people who have applied for asylum there.
Take the money and leave, please. The Swedish government is offering to pay immigrants $34,000 if they go back to their home country.
Sweden's welfare system as we know it began to take shape in the 1930s, with policies aimed at reducing inequality and supporting vulnerable populations. But it was after World War II that things really took off. By the 1960s and 70s, Sweden had built the Scandinavian model that the world envied. Labor migrants arrived in the 1960s, and in the decades that followed, the country opened its doors to refugees fleeing war-torn regions like the Balkans, the Middle East, and Africa. The country enjoyed low crime rates, near universal access to education and healthcare, and one of the most gender-equal societies in the world. Social trust was high, ethnic conflict was virtually non-existent, and its generous safety net was funded by a strong, productive economy. But Sweden's success came at a cost. By the 1990s, the country was facing challenges that put pressure on its welfare model. For one, an aging population was driving up healthcare and pension costs. As more people retired and lived longer, fewer workers were contributing to the system, raising questions about long-term sustainability. At the same time, economic slowdowns during the 1990s and early thousands further tested Sweden's welfare state. In fact, the Swedish economy was hard hit by the global financial crisis and economic downturn of 2008 and 9. Gross domestic product, GDP, growth came to a virtual standstill in 2008 and declined by more than 5% in 2009. Arguably the most difficult year for the country's economy since World War II. However, the economy bounced back quickly. And yet, despite early signs of cracks, Sweden continued its policies of openness and generosity. In fact, during the 2000s, the number of immigrants has increased, reaching an all-time high in 2016. Sweden's asylum laws were among the most generous in the European Union. For years, the country accepted more refugees per capita than almost any other Western nation. During the European migrant crisis, Sweden took in over 160,000 asylum seekers in a single year. Many of these newcomers were fleeing war and instability in countries like Syria, Afghanistan, and Somalia. Sweden's leaders framed this as a moral obligation, a chance to live up to the country's reputation as a humanitarian superpower. To put things into perspective, over the past 20 years, Sweden's share of its non-Western population has increased from 2% to 15% of the total population, an unprecedented increase in Sweden's history. No other country in Europe, apart from Germany, accepted as many refugees relative to its size. In fact, Sweden's population has become much more ethnically, religiously, and linguistically diverse over the past 70 years as a result of immigration. Every fourth resident in the country has a foreign background, and every third has at least one parent born abroad. While the initial intentions were noble, the consequences of rapid, unintegrated immigration have been far-reaching. Because this openness came at a time when the welfare system was already under pressure from economic and demographic changes. Well, when refugees and immigrants arrive, they often need housing, healthcare, education, and language training, all of which are expensive. To outside observers, Sweden seems to have it all. It combines a high living standard with a strong social security net, some of the most progressive values in the world, and generous systems for paid sick and maternity leave. Health, education, and elder care are mainly publicly funded, yet competition and choice are encouraged because private firms play an important role in providing these services. Many Swedish voters, however, are dissatisfied with the trajectory of their society. Critics have long argued that the country's generosity has backfired, creating ghettos, gang violence, and overburdened public services. And the Sweden's social model is now on its last legs, with employees complaining of worsening working conditions. Meanwhile, new budget cuts are being announced by local and regional authorities, whose deficits are exploding. For instance, unemployment rates among foreign-born residents are significantly higher. As of 2023, the unemployment rate for immigrants was around 15%, compared to just 6% for native Swedes. This disparity places an additional burden on the welfare system. Barriers like language difficulties, skill mismatches, and even discrimination prevent many immigrants from finding jobs. This means more immigrants rely on social benefits, increasing demand on public finances. But the challenges aren't just financial. The rapid influx of immigrants has also reshaped Sweden's social landscape in ways that are hard to ignore. For years, Sweden was seen as a liberal utopia, but today, it carries the grim distinction of having the highest rate of gangland killings in Europe. And the average age of serious offenders is shockingly low, sometimes as young as 13 or 14. Entire segments of Swedish suburbs are now classified as especially vulnerable areas. These neighborhoods, often home to immigrant communities, are sometimes referred to as no-go zones, where police struggle to maintain control. Local clans and criminal networks rule these areas, and first responders won't enter without heavy police escorts and flak jackets. Moreover, there has also been a rise in religious and cultural tensions. In 2023 alone, several incidents of anti-Muslim disputes and Quran burnings were reported, making headlines not just in Sweden, but across the world. For many Muslim immigrants, these events have created a sense of alienation and insecurity in a country that was once seen as a safe haven. Another critical area feeling the pressure of immigration is Sweden's healthcare system. Sweden's hospitals and clinics are struggling to keep up. With an aging population, increasing demand for healthcare services, and a shortage of medical staff, the additional burden has led to longer wait times and resource shortages. Now, Sweden invests heavily in integration programs like SFI, Swedish for immigrants. But progress has been slow, and many immigrant communities remain isolated, creating pockets of poverty and inequality. Also, in recent years, Sweden's government has reversed its decades-long stance of generosity. Immigration policies have become more restrictive. Some would even say hostile. But here's the thing. Even if Sweden stopped immigration entirely, which isn't realistic, the demographic shift has already begun. The question isn't whether Sweden can afford immigration. It's whether Sweden can adapt to the new reality. So, does that mean immigration threatens Sweden's welfare system? Well, the answer, like most things in life, is complicated. On one hand, the challenges are undeniable. Rising costs, social tensions, and integration struggles are straining Sweden's model. On the other hand, immigrants bring long-term benefits. A younger, growing population can help offset Sweden's aging workforce. So, as Sweden navigates this complex landscape, it must confront difficult questions about identity, belonging, and the limits of generosity. What do you think? Can Sweden's welfare system survive the pressures of mass immigration? Or is it time for a major rethink? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into today's most pressing issues. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.